So hello, everyone. I'm Anthony Allen. I'm the Assistant Director of Ecological Restoration here at Save the Sound. And we're really excited today to be talking about nature-based solutions, nature-based resilience with a very special guest, Rick Bennett, Regional Scientist for the North Atlantic Appalachian region of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and John Vanderworth, who is our fish biologist here at Save the Sound. And we're going to cover quite a bit of ground today, partly by virtue of the fact that Rick covers a lot of ground. As the regional scientist, he guides the region's efforts on topics like strategic habitat conservation, climate change, monitoring and evaluation of coastal resilience projects, aquatic connectivity planning, and implementation strategies, as well as many other things on the national and regional level. And in the context that sort of he'll be talking today and we'll be talking today, he also oversaw the implementation of the disaster relief efforts in the Northeast region for the Wildlife Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, associated with Hurricane Sandy. So over the past 10 years, that funding was deployed, the projects for restoration were completed, and monitoring was done. And so there's been a lot of learning that happened over that time, and Rick's going to talk about some of that. In particular, we're going to focus today on a project of Save the Sounds that was funded in part with that funding, that Hurricane Sandy funding, on the West River in New Haven, Pond Lilly dam removal. With those who are familiar with our organization and have been for a while certainly know about this project. It's been a transformative project in many ways, and John is going to go a bit more in depth about the exact ways that's been transformative and what we've seen in terms of the fish and vegetation populations at that site since it was removed in 2015. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quick and just give a bit of an introduction to Save the Sound. Some of you are very, very familiar with us, and others perhaps, you're more familiar with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and that's the reason you're on the call today. So I just wanted to give a bit of background here. We are a regional environmental nonprofit. We work across the Long Island Sound region. That's the whole state of Connecticut, Westchester County, part of New York City, Bronx and Queens, and the North Shore of Long Island. And we fight climate change, we save endangered lands, we protect the sound and its rivers, and we work with nature to restore ecosystems. So we work across those four primary program areas, and we bring a really broad toolkit to that work. We have everyone on staff from lawyers to scientists and engineers and communications professionals. So we do a lot of work across this region, including dam removal, which is one of the things you'll hear about today. This is just to give you a sense of what that work looks like and where it happens. You can check out this map and play around with it yourself, actually, on our website. I believe it's under the About Us section and impact map. And you can filter and look through and see some of the projects that are active and some of the ones we've completed. And you can see the green shovels here are ecological restoration projects. So we really do work on both sides of the sound and all around the sound. So with that context, I will stop sharing and want to kick it to Rick to really get us started and give us some background on what the Fish and Wildlife Service has learned over the last 10 years of these Hurricane Sandy funded projects, and what we've seen maybe in terms of the Pond Lilly site. Take it away, Rick.
Great, thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay, is that good? So great. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Rick Bennett. And I guess I'd like to start, given that this is about Pond Lilly Dam, which is, New Haven, it's kind of special to me because I grew up in Hamden, Connecticut. So it's quite familiar with me and I know the area very well. And it was kind of like going home, even though I haven't been there for a long, long time. Anyway, with that, kind of my goal today is to talk about kind of the projects that we implemented under Hurricane Sandy Resilience Program, and kind of highlight the approaches we took, some of the things we learned from it, the monitoring, overall just lessons learned, and kind of walk us through that before I dive into, I'll get to Pond Lilly and all of that as I dive down. But I guess the first thing I really want to talk about is I want to talk about the funding. So it's very unique, the funding that we received this go around for Hurricane Sandy. Typically, when you get damage relief from storms, you get money to fix the things that were broken, right, that got damaged. And we got those funds and we fixed a lot of things. But we also got a very unique pot of money, and that's the resilience funds, which were not tied to where damage was done on the landscape. It was tied to doing projects that would make areas, communities, the environment more resilient to the impacts of future storms. So I don't think I've ever seen it done before, and subsequently I haven't seen it either. But it's a really good point, and I think a lot of really good work came out of this, and I'd like to see that as a kind of an approach in the future. So one, I applaud Congress for having the foresight to kind of do that. So that's just a little background on that. So our approach in the Fish and Wildlife Service, based on the guidance that came down, we kind of targeted 4 areas, 3 on the ground activities, which are really marsh restoration, beach dune restoration projects, and aquatic connectivity. They became the nexus for us to do projects that would, provide ecosystem and community resilience to future storms, flooding, habitat for fish and wildlife species, et cetera. We also had a category on science decision support tools. I'm not going to focus on that too much. I'm going to focus more on the kind of projects that we did. And you can see a variety of efforts here on the pictures. So, but before I kind of dive into aquatic connectivity and then down to Pond Lilly, I thought I'd just share, all those, we implemented a lot of projects. We implemented, the Fish and Wildlife Service implemented over $100 million in projects on the landscape. And then we did another $100 million through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and grants out to states, communities, partners, NGOs, et cetera. So combined through, and I was involved in all of that as the sort of the senior technical policy lead for the Fish and Wildlife Service, but also for the Department of Interior. So I was involved in it all. And here's just some of the outputs that have come out of that, all the projects. And I'm not going to run, you can read those as easy as I can. But we certainly did a lot of acres of marsh, a lot of miles of stream restoration, a lot of reconnection, a lot of pond habitat, a lot of living shoreline work was done in various parts. We did a lot of remapping under the Coastal Barriers Resources Act. We did seed collections. And those last 2 are really some of those decision support tools. We worked with TNC to identify the most resilient sites on the landscapes in the Northeast. The Northeast for us being Virginia to Maine. And then we were helped to fund an effort which had many partners involved, but it was on road stream crossings and standardizing the assessment that you would do on those to know where to go. So that's just a kind of a broad overview of some of the kind of outcomes that came out of all the collective projects. But now I'll focus in on aquatic connectivity. And so, the real reasons we get into aquatic connectivity is for the Fish and Wildlife Service, we're doing it to restore fish passage. But it's also reconnecting that floodplain. It's removing unsafe and obsolete dams. It's doing that community flood risk. It's protecting infrastructure. And those are the real reasons that we kind of get into this kind of work. I would like to highlight, I guess, maybe I'll show it on the next slide. So here's a question. This is a question that came up as we implemented resilience projects, in general. To what extent does dam removal or any resilience project we lead to improve ecological and social resilience outcomes? That's a hard question that was asked. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We'll come back to that. And that gets into the monitoring and some standardized metrics and all kinds of things. But I put this one on here, because that was a question that was asked. And here's 3 pictures you can see Pond Lilly Dam on the left there, which is, with the impounded area behind it and the old fishway there. And then you can see the community flooding that used to happen in that area. And then when we actually dewatered the dam to take it out, you could see the condition of that dam was pretty bad, and it was pretty susceptible to catastrophic failure. So that was just a picture on the face of the dam right after the dewatering. So let me go to the next one. Now here's some pictures of Pond Lilly. Once after we removed the dam, this was an event. There was an event, for the politicals. We tied it to a planting scenario. So you can see some of those pictures were right after the dam was removed, and the community came in, youth came in. I guess one of the things that I really want to talk about here is some nice pictures, and I'll get into it. So one of the reasons, why did we choose to work at Pond Lilly? And I would say we got there for a variety of reasons. When you looked at what the resilience criteria were that we were looking at, it kind of checked all the boxes. Our biologists were working with the state folks to identify sites. This one came up. It was, a project that was ready to go, had good partners already involved. It had youth engagement on the site. There's a tremendous local schools there really use this site and do some monitoring and all kinds of work. So it kind of checked a lot of boxes, as well as meeting a fish passage need. So it really ranked pretty high for us. So it had checked all those boxes, and and I would say we just didn't get money to implement projects. We had to compete for funding as well. So we had to write up proposals within Interior. The bureaus in Interior had to write up proposals, and apparently we were very successful at it. There was 160 million available for all the bureaus in the Department of Interior, and we got we got about 105 million of it. So we did extremely well. But again, I think it's because we had good partners. We did a lot of work to really make sure we had good proposals. And as a result, we were very competitive. But what's kind of neat here is I went back I'm not sure when these pictures were taken. I took them, but it was a couple of years after, the dam had been out and the plantings. And you could see, you look in there, you go into that site and you wouldn't know that all those buildings are over there. It's really filled in nice. There's nice trails there now. I know it definitely gets heavily used. It really has turned out fabulous. And let me get to the next one. So I'm not going to get into the fish and all that because I know John's going to talk about that. But I did want to show, because one of the criteria was about community flooding and community benefits. And I will, and so I threw this as part of a monitoring effort. We did a study with USGS where we kind of did, it's called 2D heckgrass modeling. And this is just an inundation map. But what you see here is that yellow line is, or the green line is where the dam was. And so it's no longer there. You see the direction of flow, and those red areas are the inundation area during storm events pre-dam removal. And the blue area is the flood area now after dam removal. So you can see it's really protected that community pretty substantially. And to my knowledge, there hasn't been any flooding in the community there since the dam has come out. Doesn't mean it won't happen, but it won't be any nearly as bad. So that definitely ties into infrastructure protection and damages and all of that. So then I did talk about that question was, how do you know whether there's resilience, right? So we kind of got that, asked that question by office, OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, and CEQ, Council on Environmental Quality, and others were asking, well, how are you going to be able to roll all this up? And we were like, well, you're going to need, we'll be lucky if we can demonstrate it on individual projects, let alone rolling them up. But we put a team together. I chaired that along with USGS, and we developed a set of metrics for the kind of projects that were implemented, and said, and then some measurements that you would take to start to do it in a standardized way so that you could answer how well that project was performing. And so that would give us that site specific characteristic. But because we standardized those metrics and then we applied them to at least to a subset of similar projects across the landscape, you can start to roll those together and synthesize them up and start to answer some of those larger questions. My argument has always been, this whole discussion is a whole nother talk, and so I don't want to tie it up too much, but I would say the use of standardized metrics is really important. And we not only did ecological ones, but we did socioeconomic ones. If I had one piece of advice for anybody doing any projects anywhere, think about how you would monitor performance of your project to meet your intended goals, and expand it to include any socioeconomic considerations, qualitative or quantitative, whatever you can do, build it in. Because I think the benefits of projects beyond what are in this Fish and Wildlife Service, our main one would be fish passage. But having all that flood protection to communities, or whether it's a recreational benefit or some other benefit, the more you can characterize that, the more the cost effectiveness, return on investment comes into play. And it makes it easier to sell these kind of projects into the future, and brings along more partners, because they may be in it. They may not be in it for fish passage, but they may be in it for recreation, or they may be in it for reduced flood protection. And so you get a broader base of support than just what your initial intent might have been. So again, we did it a little backwards. We did all these proposals, we funded them. They all had to have a monitoring component, but we didn't have the standardized metrics when we did all that, because the question came up afterwards. So we kind of did it backwards. And that's why it became a subset. So we did another 16 million we funded in monitoring projects. So that's that subset. So we covered all those: marsh restoration, beach dune restoration, aquatic connectivity kind of projects, and started to apply those standardized metrics. And we've done that over, it's still ongoing. It's a 7-year program. That project basically got completed 2016, 2017. And we're implementing that monitoring program through 2024, actually. Most of them end in the end of 23, but one has been extended a little bit. So that's ongoing. There's some links on here. One is for we did an assessment of the whole DOI program. And that's online. You can get that link. There were 7 case studies associated with that, or 6 case studies, one on improving marsh resilience, one on cost effectiveness of reducing coastal erosion through living shorelines, one on the restoration of aquatic connectivity, one on restoring beaches and dunes, one on community resilience planning, because that was a component that was funded under NIFWIF, and then advancing coastal resilience science. So we did have some science that was supported as well. Those case studies are online. The problem is, well, that's great. And we typically, when that study was completed, most of the projects had just been completed. So you're not really seeing the benefits. Aquatic connectivity is a little faster. When you're doing marsh and beach dune stuff, it can take years before you really see the recovery of those systems. So you need that little longer term look. So 7 years is, in my mind, is nowhere near a long-term effort. But in terms of traditional monitoring associated with projects, it is. So I just wanted to highlight that real quick. And then let's see what I got next. So, and so this gets into the, why do you want to measure success? You really want to do it because you want to know how else do you learn? I can tell you a story when so monitoring is another whole talk, but monitoring is something that people tend not like to fund because they all say it's expensive. And if they don't say it's expensive, the other common thing I hear is, well, I'd rather do another mile or acre of restoration somewhere than put it into monitoring. And through this effort, I've done some analysis of things, and I'm going to tell you, we need to stop saying that monitoring is expensive, because it's not. In this case, for Hurricane Sandy, it's 6% of the total cost of the project. And we did high-end monitoring, so you could really lower that a little bit. So to me, it's just a cost of doing business, and you build it into your design right up front and your costs right up front, because you should be doing it. And you really want to do it not just to monitor, but you want to learn about the performance of that project. Did it perform the way you thought it did? If it didn't, why didn't it? And how do we learn from that and apply that to the next project? So that adaptive learning will allow us to get better and better and better faster than if we just do projects and hope for the best. It also allows for that comparison of various spatial scales, particularly if you're doing standardized, kind of applying standardized metrics. It'll inform best management practices for the future. And all of that will result in savings by not realizing damage to infrastructure and other things. So how do we start to account for all of that? Becomes the big issue in my mind. It's how do we tie all these various pieces together and not just the one aspect? So I guess I'll get into lessons learned here a little bit. Nowadays, with climate change and everything that's going on, you really need to plan for future conditions. What is that site going to look like in the future, and design to that? Permitting, as you probably know, is probably the biggest challenge in any implementation of a project. It takes longer to do the permits than it actually does to do the project. So you need to, and the experience on some of our larger projects, we did a 4,000 acre marsh restoration down in Delaware with a 2.5 mile beach dune complex associated with it. Huge project. And that went very smoothly, but we involved we involved the permitting agencies up front in the design process. So the sooner you involve the permitting agencies, the more likely you get through that process in a much quicker, amenable way. You know, you want to, you can't over communicate. You really need to work with partners, the public, adjacent landowner, everybody. You need to be talking, pulling everybody in, and going from there. I would say the other thing is, as I've already said, plan for what you're going to monitor, you know, both ecologically and from a socioeconomic standpoint. Not traditionally done. I think we need to really move in that direction to whatever degree we can. And I would argue, here's another place. When I look at this, anytime you get a permit, there's always a monitoring plan associated with it. But typically that monitoring plan is about, did you implement what you said you were going to implement? Did you do it the way you said you were going to do it? And it's not about project performance. And if there is anything in there on project performance, it's probably qualitative at best. You know, did the vegetation respond? And it's a visual, it's not a plots and, you know, that kind of stuff. So I think there's an opportunity to build within the permit process some of this monitoring into the future. And if we could couple that, that's a way to get it done. And then ensure that we're getting that information. Another big lesson here is the pre and post, any data before pre-dam removal, post-dam removal, pre-project, post-project is really important to kind of inform the direction and how well things are going. And if you don't have that pre-stuff, then establishing a baseline early allows you to have some comparison. I think on the aquatic connectivity ones, you know, a real good example is fish passage for sure. I mean, I can tell you in all the dams that we removed, it was almost an immediate response that some fish started passing at those sites. And it has increased over time. The other thing I really wanted to point out, and this is specific to dam removals, is on the Pawcatuck River in Rhode Island. We did a lot of dam removals there. So all of a sudden, the river had all the large impediments removed. And so all of a sudden, what we're running into is all the smaller intermittent, I'll call them, barriers. So they're not a total obstruction. It's only under certain flow conditions. All of a sudden, these smaller barriers start to pop up. We have an example, one that's actually it's a weir for a stream gauge. So now it's tied to other needs, and it's a whole nother Pandora's box that is opening up there's a lot of these weirs throughout the Northeast anyway, that really haven't been looked at in terms of their inhibition on fish passage. And we're starting to run into some of that. So I'm starting to work with USGS and others to start talking about that and figure out how can we start dealing with that. So I guess I want to thank you for inviting me today. Hopefully you found something in there inspiring and useful. I thought years ago I was at a National Adaptation Forum and I heard this quote. I had to write it down. You know, if resilience is built through a project and no perfect resilience metric is around to measure it, does it have an impact? So the point is, if you don't monitor, you may see the results, but nobody knows. Just there locally, you may know, but you can't use it on a broader scale to try to make connections and have a bigger effect on implementation on a broader scale. So anyway, thank you very much. And I don't know if you want to hold for questions. I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. Thank you very much. And that's actually a great segue into John. So I think I've asked people to put questions in chat if you have questions. And so Rick or Lori with Fish and Wildlife Service can respond to those in chat as we go. And we'll also try and have some time at the end for real-time Q&A. So John, yeah, thanks, Rick. John, why don't you jump in here? Rick talked a lot about the importance of monitoring to understand the impact of these projects that we do. And you've really been running and had your finger on the pulse of the monitoring effort at the Pond Lilly site since that dam came out. So jump in here. Give us a look at what's happened there as an example.
Okay, great. Thank you, Anthony and Rick. Can everyone see the start of this? Awesome, great. So, like I said, I'm John Vanderworth with Save the Sound, and I act as the fish biologist on staff. So dive in and talk about some monitoring at Pond Lilly here. So why Save the Sound is monitoring. In the winter of 2015, and the project was completed in February 2016, the Pond Lilly Dam was removed. It restored 2.6 miles of stream and 76 acres of pond habitat for diadromous and resident fish as well. So why it was removed? It was aimed to remove passage for alewife, blueback herring, American eel, American shad, gizzard shad, lamprey, and sea-run brook trout. And also, as Rick mentioned, to prevent catastrophic dam failure and reduce the probability of flooding in adjacent neighborhoods, which from my knowledge on boots on the ground, I haven't seen or heard of any flooding in that region as well. So I would say that the probability of flooding in that area has drastically decreased since the dam was removed. So a little bit about how the monitoring works. So in 2017, U.S. Fish and Wildlife funded Save the Sound to complete monitoring. It was required for 5 years through Hurricane Sandy resilience funds, like Rick mentioned. All of the data was collected by me, but then compiled by Deep Fisheries, and then also U.S. Fish and Wildlife as well. And then 2021 was the last year of the funding. So a little bit deeper, there was permit specifics to be able to do this research. I had to apply and receive a scientific collector's permit through the state of Connecticut. This permit only allowed for non-lethal trapping, and no collection of fish. So every single fish had to be released immediately upstream of the trap. And the traps were coordinated incredibly close with CT Deep Fisheries staff, almost, if not daily, every other day, contact with fisheries biologists at Deep as well. So the methods for monitoring were a little bit of a self-design that I made up, a little bit of adapted from other designs I had seen throughout time, but I like to call it a run-of-the-river diadromous fish funnel trap. So you can see here's a picture at a different site, and then a little bit of a diagram of how the trap is built. Here is a trap, the trap at the Pond Lilly West River site. This is actually at Connells Pond, which is upstream of Pond Lilly, which here it is. The yellow star represents where the dam removal was taking place. The red star is where the trapping is done. And I was trapping upstream to prove that, yes, the fish can make it all the way through the dam removal site and further upstream. So we can also say that on top of, yes, they're able to move through, that it's not a hindrance. They're not getting beat up. They're not getting really tired and stressed, that they can completely move through the site to continue their migration. That Connells Pond there is the 76-acre pond that we were hoping would be spawning habitat, which appears it is, which I will touch on in a little bit. So the target species for trapping were alewife, blueback herring, American shad, gizzard shad, and sea lamprey. Alewife were the most prevalent fish trapped. They're an anadromous species, meaning they spawn in fresh water, spend their lives in salt water, and then come back in to repeat. They're considered a species of concern. Their populations have been declined through various different reasons, which I'll touch on a couple of the next slides. So they are important for conservation need. They're categorized as a schooling fish, so very seldom do you find a single one at a time. And there is a moratorium for them in New England, so that prohibits take, capture, or possession of any of these alewives. So a description, just in case anyone out there isn't familiar with them, they're streamlined, laterally depressed, meaning this way, not this way, like a flounder. They're deep-bodied towards the head. They're silver and whitish in color, you can see in the picture, but they do have this greenish-purple iridescence on the top section, which helps them blend in a little bit. They're about 10 to 12 inches long. They have a deeply forked tail, which helps them be really good swimmers for their ocean dwelling, but then also their migrations inland. They do have some faint longitudinal lines above their midline. You can kind of see, similar to how a striped bass looks. And one of their favorite things about them to me is that they have a single spot behind the gill plate, which acts as a false eye, which in a school confuses a predator of where the head and tail of the fish in a school is, which I just think is a really cool morphological adaptation. And their scales easily slough off, and they're really large. So through some rivers, we do visual surveys, and if there's a lot of alewife moving through there, you actually see their scales on the riverbanks and in the substrate, which is really cool in my eyes. So their role in the ecosystem, why I'm so interested and why I dork out about them, is they're zooplanktivorous. They eat all zooplankton. They also are known to eat small insects and fish larvae. They're a forage fish, which is incredibly important to the ecosystem. They help feed all of the sport fish everyone likes to catch: striped bass, tuna, bluefish. They feed osprey and great blue herons and cormorants, and they are responsible for bringing back open ocean nutrients back into fresh water so they can continue that nutrient cycle. So to me, that's just so cool that something can collect all of this nutrients in open water, store it in their body, bring it back inland up the watersheds, and through their spawning and through their actual bodies and them being predated on as well, they continue that nutrient cycle, which I think is fascinating. And it's estimated that each female can produce 30,000 to 150,000 eggs, depending on how old she is and her sexual maturity and vigor. Each egg is an average of 0.9 millimeters, sorry. And on average, only one hatchling out of every 80,000 young of a year will reach the sea. So their odds are kind of stacked up against them. But like I mentioned, they're that really important forage fish. So everything likes to eat them. Everything will try to get their mouths on them if they can. Raccoons, otters, everything. So adults are highly preyed upon, and so are the young. I mentioned earlier the population decline. A big issue was bycatch. Not necessarily that they were targeted. Sometimes they were, but the bycatch is a big problem. The populations actually decreased so much that the river herring, these alewife and blueback herring, started hiding in schools of Atlantic herring. And these fishermen were targeting the Atlantic herring, and then in those schools, the river herring were being caught as well. So on top of bycatch, water quality degradation is a huge issue as well. Fish kills, too much nitrogen blooms, and eutrophication in sounds and harbors while these fish are moving in and out of them has also decimated populations as well. And another thing, which one of the reasons we're here to talk about, is habitat loss. Throughout history, dams were put up. So with a dam being up, the fish can't reach the most optimal spawning habitat. So the fish had to choose suboptimal spawning habitat, which dropped their recruitment even lower on top of all of the stresses they were facing. So really everything was kind of stacked against these fish, but throughout policy changes, restoration practices, and water quality monitoring, and policy changes through water quality, and that's also been helping to help bring back some of these fish. So we'll dive into some of the actual data here. You can see this is the trapping data from 2017 to 2021. First year, only 3 alewife were caught, which is awesome considering the dam was just removed. So almost immediately, alewife were seen there. Following year, 34 fish. 2019, slow year. There was a lot of flooding, a lot of, flooding's not the right word. There was high flows and the traps were a little bit challenging to keep in place and keep fishing efficiently. So we had a little bit of a decreased year. 2020, 50 fish. We were really excited about that. And then 2021, 180 fish, which was amazing. There was one day, I'll show you in the next slide, that one single day, more fish entered the trap in the same location than all of 2020. So there's also other diadromous fish caught as well. Sea lamprey have been caught in the trap, gizzard, shad. So more diadromous fish are present as well. So here's the slide. You can see on April 22nd, over 50 fish moved into the trap, which was more than in 2020's year run in entirety. So that was fascinating and really exciting to see. So this is, you can see the migration over time throughout the river here and how the fish are moving and selecting kind of the optimal time for migration. Other species that are identified or caught in the trap, like I mentioned, sea lamprey. Last year, 2021, was the first year a brook trout was caught in the trap, which was incredibly exciting. Talking to state deep biologists, there was no stocking of brook trout in that area. So we are hypothesizing, fingers crossed, that that was a sea-run brook trout. It was chromed out. It had piscivorous teeth, fish eating big spiky teeth, and it also was really beat up, which kind of indicates that it might have had a couple battles out in the estuaries there. We also catch chain pickerel, yellow perch, largemouth bass, white suckers. In the past, we've gotten white suckers the size of your arm. Fascinatingly cool to see. Pumpkin seeds, red breast sunfish, bluegill, and golden shiners as well. Little bit about sea lamprey. I think they're fascinating. So we've been seeing them at the site, not only during the trapping season, but in low flow electrofishing surveys as well. We've gotten the young ammocetes in the actual engineered riffles at the site, which is incredibly fascinating. The engineer was so excited and so happy to hear that out of the entire river for these fish to choose to live, they were choosing the engineered section riffle for their habitat for their larval stage. So in March to July, the adults will move in river to spawn. They pick one rock and then they make a red or a nest behind it. And then from there, for 3 to 10 years, the larval ammoset will be in the stream bed, filter feeding in soft sand, mucky substrate. From there, they metamorphosize into adults. And once they're adult, they're a parasitic fish that use what's referred to in literature as a horny rasping tooth and a circular disc of teeth to latch onto the side of the fish, scrape the side of the fish open. They have a coagulant, so the fish does not stop bleeding, and they take all of that nutrients from the blood of the fish, store it in their body, and then move back inland into the waters to spawn and bring that nutrients back in. Again, another fish that brings nutrients from open water back inland to complete the nutrient cycle. Another fish we're seeing is brook trout, which is awesome for me. They're one of my favorite fish. They're just beautiful. And as a fly fisherman, they're just an incredible fish. They're an indicator of cold, clean water and a healthy ecosystem. So they're considered an indicator species of almost pristine watersheds. They're a species, again, of greatest conservation need. They are a resident fish, so meaning they'll spend their entire lives in the rivers. But if the river can't support that cold, clean water. The fish gets too big, doesn't have enough resources in the river. They are known to migrate into estuaries to become what are called salters or sea-run brook trout, and they will move in and out of the estuaries and become a sea-run fish, much like a steelhead or a salmon on the Pacific coast. So they're, like I mentioned, a highly sought after freshwater game species for anglers, and they're also a New England icon. They are the native trout for this region. All of the brown trout and the rainbow trout are introduced. So this is the native fish here. So whenever I see one, I'm always excited about it. They're a really important fish for showing that cold, clean habitat. Also, on top of fish monitoring, I've been doing some vegetation surveys as well. So you can see here, the numbers here, there was 31 points sampled. The percent of herbaceous cover on site varied a little bit year to year, but that had a little bit to do with time of year and ability to get out into the field because of rains last year and the year prior. But there has been relatively, I'll say statistically, a not significant change from 2020 to 2021. It's still in one standard deviation of the statistics. So here's some numbers. I know these numbers might not be the most interesting, but here's some pictures to make those numbers make a little bit more sense. So you can see that first picture right up here, that's before the dam was removed. And then immediately after, you can see that that vegetation was bouncing back incredibly quickly. Here is another angle, and you can see again that vegetation is in that last picture in 2020 looks like a jungle. There are 8 to 10 foot Joe Pye weed there. We've had multiple wetland scientist conferences come out to the site, and everyone is amazed at how vigorous this vegetation is. In that past slide, I will say one thing I'd highlight is that only about 10% of the vegetation there across the entire site has been invasive. So we're working on invasive measures moving forward, invasive removal measures moving forward. Sorry, I got a little tongue-tied there, but you can see for yourself in these pictures that the vegetation is robust and coming in incredibly well. Here's another angle from upstream. This is the riffle that we electrofished and found the sea lamprey amicetes, those young larval sea lamprey in. So you can see again that it looks almost nothing alike from the first year it was taken out to past years. So here's a little bit more of I'll call it a bird's eye view to help with the site and to see kind of what was going on. So that first pre-removal site, you can see the different colors there represent the different habitats. So that was pre-removal. The one next to it is the designed vegetation cover type. And then this is what's present now. Mother Nature took a little bit of her own course during this restoration. So instead of fighting it, we worked with Mother Nature instead of fighting her. So here you can see that from this picture to the first picture, pre-removal, there is a multitude more of various habitat types. There's more ecotones, there's more borderlines. So with that dam removal, there is an increase of wetland habitat cover types. So what does all of this mean? It starts off with saying that the migratory fish run is highly dynamic. Year to year, it's hard to pin down if what's causing the numbers to change, if it's environmental factors, if it's anything else, if there's some weird pollution going on. It's hard to see what's going on because it is so dynamic. The fish are highly migratory, and there's so many different factors that can influence the fish run. But with that, I do have some evidence to show that the fish run size, is increasing in this specific river. That first year we had 3, 2017, Now alewife are coming 180 per run last year, and we're also seeing a higher biodiversity. We saw in 2019 a gizzard shad, and 3 consecutive years there were sea lamprey there as well. So there is indication of positive ecological impacts from the dam removals. We're seeing higher biodiversity of fish and an increased habitat type for vegetation cover. So restoration and research must be continued to ensure a robust fish run in the future. That vegetation over time will create more canopy cover. It'll create more of a buffer for flood resilience. It'll slow the water down in floods, and it will help just restore connectivity of the floodplain and restore the ecosystem in entirety. So the major findings: after 5 years, alewife are successfully able to pass through the entirety of the dam removal. Like I mentioned, 3 years consecutively, sea lamprey were surveyed, which is incredibly exciting. 2021 was the first year brook trout was captured, and 2021, it was the highest record for alewife at Pond Lilly Connells Pond trapping site with 180. And I mentioned already, but a more diverse habitat for vegetation cover, wetland vegetation cover, is present through the microtopography through the areas of dam removal. And that's everything. If there's any questions, please fire away.
Yeah, thank you, John. It was great. It's always good to see that tracked over time, right? And that's what the Fish and Wildlife funding allowed us to do, and it's you know, a real testament to the story that can be told when we actually monitor effectively and at a high level through the after a resiliency project is completed. And you know, going forward, we certainly Save the Sound, you know, we're involved in a lot of different nature-based resilience practices. Dam removal, of course, is one of them. Living shorelines and marsh restoration is another. Green infrastructure in communities is also another one, as is large-scale green infrastructure. So there's a lot that we can be doing here. And you know, I know that there was some conversation in the chat about funding for monitoring, and I know Rick responded to that. Thank you, Rick. It is hard at this point to get monitoring funded, unfortunately, and a lot of that has to do with grant time periods. They tend to be 2-year grants for construction, or maybe 3 years, and you know, it doesn't. Sometimes you'll see a year of monitoring tacked on, but like Rick said, you're not going to be able to tell much from a year. And so trying to figure out how we get more funding for this work is important. I will note that the launch of the Connecticut National Estuarine Research Reserve will help with some of that for some project types, because they will have the ability to monitor in a standardized way the resilience of coastal ecosystems in various ways over the long term. So that's pretty exciting. I want to see here if we have any questions in the chat. Yes. Okay. So are there fish passages upstream from Connells Pond? So what would the next barrier be upstream? John, do you know offhand?
Yeah, there's a reservoir upstream of Connells Pond, and I do believe there is a fish ladder going up there. I have not been able, because of reservoir property, I haven't been able to see it for myself, but on aerial image, it does appear that there's fish passage into that reservoir.
Yeah, so that kind of answers the next question too about you know, what's the next impediment, maybe at the 7 mile mark or so upriver from Long Island Sound. And yeah, maybe that requires a little bit more ground truthing, but you know, we are aware that there may be a barrier upstream, and the goal of this project was obviously to get that dam out for all the reasons specified, but also to restore access to the habitat at Connells Pond and upstream there. And so we've seen some uptake and utilization of the habitat, which is really exciting. Okay, folks. Well, if you have any other questions beyond these, feel free to reach out to John. John, if you could toss your email in the chat really quick. You can feel free to reach out to John or myself or Rick. Rick, thank you so much again for joining us today for that great presentation. I know that there's so much more that we could have said and could have talked about today, and maybe we'll have to do another one of these in the future, but I appreciate everyone's time and everyone coming through for this webinar today. We are together building a new natural normal. Save the Sound is really grateful and really excited to be part of this work, both at Pond Lilly and across the Sound region. And it's all possible because of supporters. So I know that there's a lot of folks on this call right now that have been members of our organization for a really long time. We're super grateful for that. There are a lot of projects left to be done. So if you're not a member and you want to become a member, please become a member. It does help, and we love our supporters. We rely on our supporters for a lot of things. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you again, Rick. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the afternoon, and hope to see you on another webinar soon. Take care, everybody.